I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We continue in the Gospels again. We are reading that last days between the resurrection and the ascension of Christ, this time period. That's where we're at. We've been reading a number of Christ's appearances after his resurrection. Mary Magdalene saw him first, then the women, the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Simon saw him, the whole congregation he appeared to. Now there's a little confusion as to where. I think there were multiple appearances, one in Jerusalem, some in Galilee. But we've been reading all of these appearances, and Christ is coming and teaching. And even John said that not everything that Christ did and taught can be written. So there's a lot going on here that we are not told in the scriptures that we have. But we're going to pick it up now in John and finish out the Gospel of John. And again, there are no Joseph Smith translations here. John has the least of all the Gospels when it comes to the Joseph Smith translation, and there are none for this chapter. So John, chapter 21. After these things, Jesus shewed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise shewed he himself. There were together Simon Peter, and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and two other of his disciples. Simon Peter saith unto them, I go a-fishing. They say unto him, We also go with thee. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. Then Jesus saith unto them, Children, have ye any meat? They answered, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved saith unto Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, for they were not far from land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net with fishes. This is the second time that Christ, when Christ first encounters Peter and calls him to the ministry, he tells him, Cast thy nets on the right side, and they bring in a great haul of fish. Now he's doing it again. Peter is struggling to pull the net in. It is John that first recognizes it as Christ. But as soon as John says it, and Peter realizes, yes, this is Christ, I love this, it says he girt his fisher's coat unto him. He pulled his clothes up tight around his body, leapt off the ship, and swam to shore as fast as he could. He wanted to get to Christ. Nothing else mattered at that point. He left the rest of them to drag the ship to shore. Now it says it's 200 cubits, which would be about 300 feet. Between like 300 and 350 feet. So they're not too far off the shore, so it doesn't take them that long to get to shore. Might have taken them, 15 minutes because they are dragging the fish, but they make it. I like that. Peter, just as, Peter ran to the tomb, him and John both, but Peter's the one that leaps out of the ship. He didn't even want to take the time to row it to shore. He just wanted to get to his Lord. Pause a moment. Now, the Sea of Tiberias is just another name for, like the Roman name, for the Sea of Galilee. Galilee, I believe, is the Greek name, Kinnereth is the Hebrew name, and Tiberias is the Latin name. It's all the same place. They're at the Sea of Galilee. So they had that initial appearance of Christ in Jerusalem, and that he appeared to them. That was all on the day of his resurrection. He appeared to the women, to Mary Magdalene, the women, the men on the road to Emmaus. He appeared to Simon, and then he appeared to the whole congregation, all on that same day. 8 days later, he appeared to Thomas. At some point after that 8 days, they have gone up to Galilee, and we read about that in Matthew and Mark, a little bit out of order, but they go up there, and we read about them going up there and meeting with Christ. And I think this is the meeting with Christ. This is probably 10, 15 days after the resurrection. Christ is coming to them. He told them to come up here, and it was at Galilee that he would give them their final instructions. So that's where we're at. Now we continue, verse 9. As soon then as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. Jesus saith unto them, Bring the fish which ye have now caught. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. Jesus saith unto them, Come and dine. And none of the disciples durst ask him, Who art thou? Knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus then cometh and taketh bread and giveth them, and fish likewise. This is now the third time that Jesus shewed himself to his disciples after that he was risen from the dead. Remember, the first time he appeared, Thomas wasn't there. That was the day of his resurrection. As I said, 8 days later, he appears to them again when Thomas is there, and this is the third time. This isn't his third appearance. This is his third appearance to all the disciples as a group. And I like this too, that they come to shore and Christ already has dinner. He's got the fire going, he's got the fish and the bread all cooked, waiting for him. Tells them to bring the fish in. They caught 153 fish. They were big fish, and yet the net was undamaged. I find these details are just fascinating. Christ was not only able to get them a large catch, but it preserved the net too. But let us continue verse 15. So when they had dined, Jesus saith to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? He saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith unto him, Feed my lambs. He saith to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith unto him, Feed my sheep. He saith unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved, because he said unto him the third time, Lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus saith unto him, Feed my sheep. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girded thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he saith unto him, Follow me. So why is Christ asking Peter this and telling him to feed my sheep, and feed my lambs? Because the difference between lambs and sheep, lambs are the young, sheep are the mature. So he's telling him, feed not only those who are well-versed and established in the gospel, but the new converts, those who are just coming to faith. But why is he saying this? Remember that at the beginning of the chapter, they were all sitting around wondering what they were going to do. Christ had told them to come to Galilee, and he would see them there. So they're all in Galilee, and they're sitting around. What's going on? What are we doing? And Peter says, well, I'm going back fishing. Remember, he was a fisherman. That's what his livelihood was. He doesn't know what to do, so he's going to go back to what he knows best. He goes fishing. Christ is here saying, he's telling Peter, you need to be out there preaching the gospel. Don't go back to your former occupation. You have been called to the ministry. Get out there and preach. Feed my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep. That's what he's telling Peter. That's why he's telling Peter this. He also prophesies Peter's death. Have your stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. This is to signify that Peter will also be crucified. His hands will be stretched, and he will be carried where he would not. That's what we got here. Let's finish it, verse 20. Then Peter, turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, which is he that betrayeth thee? Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? Jesus saith unto him, If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Then went this saying abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, He shall not die. But if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? This is the disciple which testifieth of these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written. Amen. 2 things here. Well, actually, I'm going to say 3. First of all, this is how we know that whenever the book of John, whenever the Gospel of John references the disciple whom Jesus loved, we know he's talking about John, because he tells us here. This is the disciple that Christ loved, and this is the one that is writing these things to you. He is identifying himself, not by name, but he is identifying himself. In addition, this is how we know that John did not die. He was translated, just like the 3 Nephites were. Now, it is clarified, both in the Book of Mormon and in the Doctrine and Covenants, that this is what this means. And I think at this point, why John is writing it in this way, John knows he's not going to die. He's been given that gift. But he's writing it in this way because he doesn't necessarily want others to know, not at this time. So after Peter is told this, the saying goes out, and the saints are all spreading the word that John's not going to die. And John's like, well, he didn't actually say that. But I think it's more John's getting old. The Gospel of John is one of the last books of the New Testament to be written. And it's written like 70 years after the crucifixion. And John was already probably in his 30s or possibly up into his early 40s. So he's probably 100 years old at the time that he's writing this gospel. And he's banished to Patmos. Saints are being persecuted. I think he's just trying to tone things down a little bit to avoid further persecution, both of himself and others. The last thing to note is in the end there where it says, we know his testimony is true. This is again, as I said in the Book of Mormon, the records are what established the gospel. Without the written history, the power of that written history is what establishes the gospel. If we didn't have that written history, we wouldn't know God. We couldn't know. And so once again, the scriptures are telling us here of the vital importance of having a true testimony in the written record. But that is the end of the Gospel of John. We're going to leave this video here, and we're going to read the last few verses of the Synoptic Gospels in our next video, finish out the Gospel. So I will see you there.